everybody. This is the Land Down Under Hangout, and tonight we are talking about The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which is my pick for this month. I chose it because a lot of the people in the book club really enjoyed The Night Circus, and also it was a gift as well, so I was really looking forward to reading it, and I'm looking forward to hearing people's thoughts about it. So I guess I'll go first. Why not? It was a bit of a disappointment, but I think that's probably a lot to do with the fact that I'd built it up so much because I liked The Night Circus so much, and I don't know whether, if I had not had any expectations, whether I would have felt differently about it. But I did find that it was a bit of a slog to get through, especially the first half. The second half was a bit better, but I don't know if that's just because I knew I had like 2 days to get it finished for this hangout and kind of made myself keep reading. I just found it a bit confusing, and I think it'd be an interesting one to reread. I wonder what it'd be like if I reread it. Maybe a lot of things, I'd be picking up a lot of things that would make a lot more sense and everything, but I don't really feel like I want to reread it. So Mel, you're on that corner of my screen, so you can go next.
Excellent. Well, actually, a big fat ditto to all of that. I read it in February, so it's actually been quite a while. And when it was picked, I did have intentions to try giving it a reread because I wrote exactly that in my review. Maybe this would be better with a reread. And I had exactly the same feeling when the time came up. I don't really want to. I have some things that I would like to talk about that I think are problems. But overall, I think it was a 2-star book, which I gave 3 stars because the language was beautiful. So pretty much that's how I felt.
Bobby?
Yeah, I ditched it. So it was quite funny because I was reading it and I got to page 200, and the afternoon hangout I was at, I was saying, oh yes, I'm enjoying it, and when I got to about page 200, I realized that night what did it for me was there was this, because there's all those little chapters, interjection chapters, right, of other stories, and I understood that was significant, and of course they were going to start wrapping up and start tying together. Obviously didn't happen, and I was just like, no, I'll keep going, and I was being all optimistic, and we got to this point where I had 2 pages of the only story I cared a shit about, and then I got dragged into another story and I went and put it away. So
what was the story you gave a shit about? Because I'm curious about
so Ezra and Mirabelle was the only one that I could follow along with that kept popping up that clearly was tying in with everything else that came before it, and so I had 2 pages where they went from the room with all the doorknobs, and they got in the elevator, and that's all you got of that one scene that had been previously progressing, and then there was an interjection that I just kind of barreled through, and then they literally got like 500 feet or something, got in an elevator, and it went to the next one, and I went, you kidding me? And nearly threw my e-reader across the room, which I didn't realize I was suppressing that much rage with how this book was going until that happened. It was just I was feeling too much whiplash, so I couldn't. The only people I had really cared about, I didn't get to spend enough time with. I was tired of being yanked around everywhere else. Now maybe there's other things going on in my life that's making me more sensitive to that. I will pay that, but I don't know if I'd be willing to start it up again later. So just because of that, there's enough grouch about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it was very nicely written though. It's very I liked the way that she writes. I just frustrated. Yeah, too frustrated.
Okay, Sarah.
So I was going okay. I was like, this is a 3-star book because I'd accidentally read Mel's review. Hadn't meant to read it.
Sorry.
And I was like, Mel has an issue with this. It'll be interesting. So I kind of had it in the back of my mind, but we don't always agree on books, so that's fine. And was going, I was like going okay. And then I was like, I finally worked out an overdrive or whatever it's called, how to figure out what percentage you're up to, like by making bookmarks and then sliding, because I had to look this up and read it for God's sake. But I figured it out, and I'm like, hang on. This feels like we should be 80% of the way there, and I'm like 50% of the way there. And honestly, it just dragged. Like, it's interesting that you said, Kirsten, the second half went faster for you, because I really enjoyed the first half, but the second half, I felt like Moses and the Israelites, and we were wandering around in the desert, and I was waiting to get somewhere. I was just like, it just could have done with some judicious editing, basically. I felt like her world building, I don't know, maybe she sat with the Night Circus for a lot longer, because the world building in that was really tight. In this, it just wasn't as tight. That was my biggest problem with it. And I was just like, there were huge swathes of stuff I would have cut out of that second half. And I just kept going, God, am I there? Am I there? I'm just getting really frustrated and bored. And yeah, so I'm kind of with Mel. It descended into 2.5-star book territory, and that doesn't normally happen for me. So I just, exactly what Bobby said, I really wanted to know about Zach and Dorian, and then instead of there being a plot, we're just wandering around in this Starless Sea. I'm like, oh my God,
don't remind me, I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah, so I was really I got really I don't know if I was frustrated, I was just bored. So that's my take. We'll get into more of it soon.
Okay, Elizabeth.
I love this book.
Yay! I love it when we have differing opinions.
I just really love this book. I loved the tone. I loved all the little details. I thought that, like, I was when I because this is the second time I've read it through. I read it through earlier this year. And as I was reading it through again, I was just amazed at how she managed to keep track of all of the little details that she puts into it, and she picks up again pages and pages later. I'm like, that's incredible. I'd forgotten how twisty, like, it was as a plot. So yeah, I just really enjoyed it.
I did think that as I was reading it, that, like, I felt like if I had read it again, I'd be picking up on a lot of the stuff that I'd missed, because I kept getting to things. And because this was partly my fault, because I read it, like, the first half I read really slowly, like a couple of pages a night, and it took me like a couple of months. And then I had left it sitting for ages where I was reading something else, and then I went back to it because I went back to it like 2 days ago, and I've read the last half in the last couple of days, because I was like, well, I can't not finish it because it's my pick. So I just kind of, really rushed through the last bit. And I did feel like there's a thing here that's referring back to something else that I've forgotten about. And if I remembered about that, this would probably be a lot better. So I think it's partly my own fault that I've kind of not picked. I did feel like I was missing stuff all the time. Like, that's something that I know I'm supposed to be getting, and it's going over my head. So I do wonder whether I would enjoy it more if I read it again and I got to make all those connections and put all that stuff together. But I haven't. There's a lot of other things I want to read before I go back and reread something like this. So I have another point about that, but I'll come back to that. So Naomi, you're still muted.
Sorry. So I'm in the same boat as most of the rest of us. There were about 4 to 6 chapters in the back half that I was like, woohoo, I'm getting the story that I wanted, and then it all went away. So I had a lot of the same problems. Did anyone else listen to it? Karina and I both did the audiobook.
I started with the audiobook and couldn't follow, and I thought it was the narrator, and then I went to my e-reader and still couldn't follow. So I don't know how much of it was the narrator and how much of it was the way that the book was laid out, to be fair. And
I thought the reason I couldn't get the flow of the story was because I was listening to it rather than reading it physically, but it seems like it didn't matter.
No, it's a terrible book to listen to on audio, I think. Like, it really needs...
No, I mean, a lot of people who read it also seem to have the same problem of, stuff didn't make sense, stuff didn't flow. There's just a lot of, it kind of comes together at the end, but you, there's just a lot of stuff that you're getting that you don't really need at the beginning. And then like I wanted more of the story of Zachary, Ezra Rollins, and Dorian. I wanted their epic love story. Where is it? Give it to me. That's what I'm
Hallelujah.
for. I feel very mildly ripped off that I've been given this story where there's like this love story between Mirabella and the Keeper and Dorian and Zachary, and I get nothing. I'm really unloved. I just want this, these people having this relationship, and it's just kind of more of it. I don't know. I just didn't feel like I got the story that I wanted. It's not a bad book. I enjoyed the language, and like that's why I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was a 2-star book with language that was beautiful.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
But again, I don't know that I would reread it to see if it made more sense to me, because there's so many other books that I want to read, and ain't nobody got time.
Yeah. Karina.
I haven't finished it. I'm basically here because I'm here. So I gave myself like 3 weeks to listen to it, and I'm only 8 hours in, if that's any indication. I usually listen while I'm in the gym in the morning, and often if I don't feel like listening, I will switch to a podcast instead of listening to a book. And it could just be my headspace at the moment, because like I had an assignment due yesterday, same boat as Liv, and that's been my world for the past 8 days. So when you brought up Moses and the Israelites, I was like, please stop. I've just spent like days.
I did think of you.
Please stop. They're very funny. So yeah, so that's been my headspace. So I haven't really, I'm not sure if it's because I'm just overwhelmed and tired and everything that I just couldn't listen to it, or if it's just so horribly challenging to listen to as a book. Because I found that the story parts versus the actual plot, I was like, I don't want to listen to these little bit stories because they take such a long, like if they were just like 5 minutes instead of 25 minutes, maybe it would be okay, but they just take up such a long time. And I'm like, I have a finite amount of time in the morning. Can you just get to the story, please? So yeah, I'm about 8 hours in, and I may finish it. I don't know.
8 hours of how many hours, by the way?
18.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like, if people didn't enjoy it, maybe I don't want to waste my time finishing it.
Maybe they should make an abridged version that just has the
fucking story and not all the extra crap.
Or put it in like, make them like novellas that you can read as an addition. Like here is the story of the pirate and the girl, and here is the story of the
Eleanor
boy
and Simon.
Yeah, like reading them, I think, as a whole story altogether, I think would help me make more sense.
I really liked all those little stories, but I think you're right about like I just lost track of where.
I like them. They're just really long to listen to. And by the time you get back to the actual story, you're like, oh yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah,
I have a thought about that. We should come back to it after we hear from you.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts too, but we'll come back. Gee, what do you reckon?
I'm with Liz. I really like this. I loved it. I thought it was written really well. It reminded me of the night circus visiting different tents, visiting different stories. I loved the metaphor. It was full of metaphor the whole way through, and I loved that. I loved not knowing what the hell was going on as much as the characters didn't know what the hell was going on. And I still don't quite know what the hell is going on, but I kind of liked that. I can see why you find it tedious. There is one main story that threads all the way through it, but it's threaded on both sides by other stories. There are like 4 different stories in here. 4 different books in here. It makes me wonder how she wrote it.
I was wondering that too when I was reading it. I was like, how did she even, like, where was when she outlined this, what was she doing? It's like, I'm not smart enough to even read it, let alone write it.
It's very like taking a lit class. I thought it was like taking a lit class. Yeah. I just, yeah, really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. Would read again. Would read slower. I read it in 2 days to catch up for this
Oh, wow.
hangout. Would read it slower so that I could go over the bits that I know I missed, because I skim read some bits at the beginning. Yeah.
I wonder whether that's a big difference between those of us who really liked it and didn't, is that like you were happy to go along with the not knowing what was going on, whereas I was like, but I don't understand and I'm confused.
I think it'd be really nice to like take really slowly and meander through all of the stories, because it's really lovely written.
Oh, beautifully written, yeah.
Of
I really
course.
liked a lot of the side stories too. I really liked the Simon and Eleanor?
Eleanor.
And I really liked the moon, the bit with the moon and in the
Yeah.
inn. But there was so many bits where I was like, okay, I get, it goes to show that she probably achieved what she was trying to achieve. She was trying to achieve something where it felt like a dream, where like when you're dreaming, it goes from one thing to another, and to when you're dreaming, it makes sense. But then when you wake up, you're like, what? Why did I go from this place to that place? And I was, you know, all these things that don't quite fit together. And then, like, if that was what she was going for, she achieved it. And it reminded me a little bit of Alice in Wonderland through the Looking Glass in that way. Like I could transition from one place to another, and I'd be like, well, how did they get to that? And where and what? And I feel like she was probably going for that. And
Yeah,
she achieved that, but it just
time.
frustrated me.
I appreciate that she specifically references Alice in Wonderland at several points. There is one part where
Still Bunny.
Yeah, but there's one time where Dorian, I think Alice thinks something.
Yes.
And I was like, that is such a nice turn of phrase, and everyone knows what you mean.
Yeah, I noticed that too, because I was like, oh wow, that's so funny that it's such a prolific work that everyone knows exactly what that means when it says Alice thinks, because it was when they were falling, and he was like thinking about how far he was going to fall for, and was he going to fall through the center of the earth, and it's like the bit when she's falling down the rabbit hole. And yeah, so definitely, and I think maybe the bunny in the, you know how the Eleanor was wearing bunny ears.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered whether that was a White Rabbit reference as well.
Also, there was a giant rabbit.
Celestial
hair, which I did like.
Hair, yeah.
That was really cute. I really enjoyed that. It's not a bunny, it's a celestial hair. And I was like,
which also connects nicely to the moon elements as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. That I liked a lot. I thought that was great.
It's a literary trope somewhere, isn't it?
I mean,
Celestial
probably.
bunnies from something.
One of the things I liked about it was like all the little references and like different kinds of references. So in when at the beginning, like they're grounded like in this world, like they reference Sarah Waters and things like that. Ravenclaw, for example. Stuff like that. And then later, one of the things that I really liked was that there was a sneaky reference to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell in there, and because it says that Zachary picks up a heavy volume with footnotes and with a raven on the cover about two magicians of England. I see what you're doing there.
Oh, see, I thought there was some allude to the Prestige.
Because that was another book that I started and didn't finish. I started reading that book and couldn't finish it. So
I just looked up the celestial hair.
Yeah.
It is a sacred child of the goddess, dances across the face of the full moon, ever bright, graceful in its zigzag path. It eludes the hunter, mischievous, inventive, fertile, and beautiful totem animal for the greenwood.
See, that makes so much sense. But this is what I meant about, like, felt like I was missing so much and that I just wasn't getting a lot of it. And, you know, it was frustrating to me because I knew there was more there that I wasn't understanding that I should be getting, that then I just got frustrated. And it probably didn't help that, like, this afternoon when I was trying to read it, my kids were being really annoying and loud. And I was trying to focus and going, I'm confused and be quiet. So,
whereas I'm just like, I don't particularly enjoy books that are that referential to so many other things. I get really frustrated and annoyed that I'm just like, I can't know all of this. I can't know every single reference that was in the author's head. I haven't read.
See, I find Pratchett is like that a bit sometimes. I find the same thing when I'm reading Pratchett, is that I'm like, I'm getting a whole lot of these jokes, but I can tell there's jokes in here that I can tell that was meant to be a joke that I didn't get because I haven't read the thing that he's referencing.
And you find with his stuff, there'll be times when it's okay and the story is enough that you don't care that you miss some because you got enough yourself, or the story has carried you along as well enough. But then other ones that you've written by him, there's too much that you're missing, and each person's mileage varies and that sort of thing, and that's fine. And that works for some. This one was just too much. It was for me. I was just like, I have no idea what the hell. What was with the fucking bees at the end? For God's sakes.
I called that. I was like, as soon as they got to that place and they went hello, I was like, oh, this is the kitchen.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I was like, actually, I kind of like that.
Yeah, I did too, because I loved the kitchen. That was my favourite thing about the book.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I want to live in this place where I can sit by a fire and read books and then just send notes down for whatever food I want. I'll be as big as a house, but I'd be really happy.
Naomi, you were going to say something. What was it?
I was just saying that I would enjoy if there was footnotes for all of these references. So if there's one that I don't know, I can just be like, oh, I know where that's from now. Okay, I understand your reference. Please continue with your story. Footnotes.
Yeah. No, I probably deal with it a little bit better that circumstance too.
Do you know what else it reminded me of? I don't know, how many of us read that S book that had all the ephemera?
I did.
I was exactly what I was going to say, because it's exactly the kind of vibe. But that annoyed me more than this one. Like
I felt a similar.
Just dragged on once they were like looking for one another.
Yeah, but that was bad, and it should feel bad. Like it was all bad. I know I chose it, but it was still bad, and I still feel bad.
There was lots of things I liked about that book,
I loved
but I felt the same
book, all the stuff
feeling.
in it, and I haven't gotten rid of it because I've never felt like I could, because it's quite amazing, but I've never been able to read it, and I got really, I tried to read it, and I was like, I don't know where this is going. It very much felt like that, but this at least, it had beauty in the words. I was enjoying some of the plot lines.
Like that's the thing, like even though I was like meh on some of the like actual story parts of the book, or some of the but I still enjoyed all the language of the book and the writing of the book, which helped me to keep going through. It also helped that I could just play it in one ear while I was at work doing typing, so I just like had it constantly playing. So
I had a couple of other comparisons. One is one that Mel will get, and that's the 10,000 Doors of January. If you're into portal fantasy that involves lots of world hopping and things, that's a really good
Which
one
I would highly recommend as a better option for that.
Well, I have to disagree, but you know.
I know.
And Mel, you're also going to hate me for this, because I actually got a bit of a Becky Chambers vibe from some of this sometimes. In that from this one, because there is some of a sense of community and people like genuinely caring for each other.
That was actually one of my complaints about this one, is I feel like that one of the things that was missing for me is the actual feeling like the human connections were earned. I felt like, you know, especially at the end, Zachary and Ezra, is it? Sorry, it's been a while.
No, Ezra's his middle name.
Dorian, yeah. Okay, right. They're like epic romance, except for you've spent almost no time together.
Yes, that was my issue. I wanted an actual like build-up of relationship between them, and I want more of Mirabelle and the Keeper. Like I want to know like different. Like I don't just want like random snippets that don't really make sense. Like I want to know like what was it like for him to know her and her not to know him and not to love him in a lifetime.
Yes.
Like what was that like for him? I want to know these stories. Like even if it's just like a short.
The metaphor fables about them were lovely, but equally fascinating would have been all the incarnations and some stories of those. And I mean, maybe it was like that. Maybe she didn't want to give away the plot at the end, but it would have been kind of wonderful, you know, to learn about that.
Like having just small snippets of like breaths of what it was like for both of them living different lives, and you know, having to find one another again and again, and not getting to stay with one another, and him having to always lose her, and like that's a story that I want, and I didn't get it.
In that case, I would recommend checking out Elegy. Elegy? How does one say that word?
Elegy. I believe it's elegy, like as in like the poetic.
Yeah. I'm just going to look up the author because it's by an Australian author, and it is about, basically it's about two lovers that reincarnate over and over, but only one of them knows who they are and remembers all the time.
Have you read I've got to remember it. I'm going to find it and then I'll come back to you guys.
So that was by Jane Abbott.
What's it called?
And again, it is it's set in an Australian town. It is it is a literary novel, so it's kind of a bit more towards the Starless Sea end, but kind of more grounded, I would say. Definitely less metaphor. But if you like that sort of tragic lovers reincarnated throughout time.
Has anybody else read any Martin Miller other than me? The Good Fairies of New York?
No.
That is also another one where there's, I think it might be a different one. I'll find the Martin Miller book, but yeah, it's about another person who one of them knows they reincarnate and keeps watching their best friend who they keep meeting with just fail at life over and over again. So and they're very funny books. So I'll post them in the book chat.
Was I the only one who was super disappointed in the scene when Zachary turned up at Dorian's hotel room and then he was drunk and then he just went home? I'm like,
yes.
I was like, but could you not I wasn't like expecting him to take advantage of his drunken state, but I was like, you could just stay there until he wakes up and make sure that he's okay, and then you would have some interaction later, and then it was just kind of like
making interaction.
I just want some sort of conversation between the two of you that's like just meaningful. Stop shaking your head, G. That's what I want.
Screw that.
She's shaking her head.
I've been wondering the labyrinth of rooms as well. I want to go discover all the stories that are everywhere. I want to find the paper dollhouse. I want to fold up origami stars.
I love the origami stars. I thought that was cool.
Discovering stories, that would be great. But that's also not what we got.
There were so many elements to this that I really loved, and I just the problem with it was that I just felt like I wasn't connecting it the way I should have been. Like I felt like I was missing something and that I wasn't
like breadcrumbs far earlier than post page 200. Like it's like because it was obvious that she was trying, like that everything was going to be significant, but you couldn't keep it in your head. And if at page 200 of 400 I still feel really dumb, I don't want to keep reading the book.
Yeah.
I thought that was so smart.
No, for me it felt,
I was like, how can you keep your reader?
And had let the child hold the remote, and they kept flicking through the channel every time I got interested.
It's a very good analogy.
But she's 300 pages in, and she's got 4 stories going, and you still don't know what the hell's going on. How smart is it to be able to do that, like write that story and not give it all away?
I'm saying that it was not pleasurable for me to read. It expected too much of me. Like she did a good job. I loved the richness of the world. I wanted to walk through it, but the world I wanted to walk through, I kept getting yanked out of. Like the one that I was clearly invested in was not the one that kept being thrown in front of me, and I still had to then reinvest in a new story every couple of pages, which was very frustrating.
It's all the same world.
It is, but
you don't know that.
It's even the same world as the Night Circus.
The story of Simon and Eleanor, and the story of even just the story of the boy in front of the door. Like, yes, we know that that's Zachary, but that's not the Zachary that we're having the story about. And the problem is that you're following a story and then suddenly you're having to try and follow another story, and then you come back at a point and you're like, wait, where was I?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about
I would have
comparing to the
all those
nights.
extra bits,
Yeah.
read the story, and then gone back and read the little bits at the end.
So I've been thinking a lot about the night circus and what she did in the night circus that captivated us and we could track compared to this. And I think it's about, and maybe it is for a class of reader that needs to be led by the nose a little bit more, but it's the breadcrumbs that when you come back, you go, oh yeah, I read about that. I remember that from that bit, like the clockmaker.
That's what I kept looking up for, and I couldn't find them.
And, you know, like there's sort of like there was just almost too many threads. And I think she was weaving something interesting, but I couldn't keep track of the different threads. And what I enjoyed, because I reread The Night Circus again this year. And whilst, again, like this one, I wasn't very satisfied by the end of it. What I really loved is those stories. I mean, the one about the clockmaker is one of my favorite parts in The Night Circus because it's this beautiful piece and you go, oh, okay, we learned about how the clock was built. And you don't think you're going to come back to it, but you do. But it was also complete. And I think that maybe that's one of our issues is that we kind of, like the Ballad of Eleanor and Simon, I actually loved because it was Lovers Out of Time. But actually it could have been just that story, you know, on its own, read the whole lot, and then, you know, and then you go, where was that at? But
no, I don't think it could. Like, I think like the structure is really quite deliberate, and like she's reminding you as you go of who these people are and what they're doing and how, and then you pick it up in other places.
I have to.
Whereas if
I
you
kept
had
thinking she was the moon, I didn't think she was Fate because I kind of forgotten all about the Fate story. They keep saying, what do you do with Fate's heart? It was just, and I still don't know how the Owl King is, and I'm not sure why we went off with Cat. I don't know what her significance was, and maybe someone who's smarter than me can explain why.
Thank you. I'm glad
He's
it's
the
not
new
just me.
keeper.
I do feel like I'm
new
just not
harbour.
smart enough for this book.
So there's a new harbour now. The sea has risen above the old harbour, and there's a new one because there is always a new one every time the sea rises. She's the keeper of the new harbour.
Right.
They're the new team
So
for the new harbour.
they're never going to go and have Thanksgiving dinner at.
That wasn't real.
I know, but the promise was made to Kat that she could go for Christmas.
And yeah, she can.
What was the thing with the fortune teller saying, like when that night in September when you think that you have no one to turn to, call me then? What was that about?
Cat's story. That cat story is not in here.
I wanted her story. Actually, that was when I was reading towards the end and we started getting her journal. I was like, I was getting really into her journal and stuff and her trying to track him down. I really enjoyed that part. And I was like, I wanted more of this. I wish that we had had her all the way through looking for him.
It literally tells you though, like it says that all stories do not always end in a nice rounded manner. You don't always get the answer. It literally tells you that.
I know, but I like it when I do.
As it's not giving you the answer.
And I have to. I know that's a very simplistic. I'm a simple reader. I like to have.
It tells you that all the way through
leave,
too.
By the way, did they leave or did they become Fate?
They're the new keeper in Fate.
No,
Guardian.
but that's what they're saying Cat is. This is why I was a bit
No.
confused.
She's
Guardian.
the keeper. Dorian, it would be the Guardian.
And the acolyte.
And the acolyte, yeah.
Right.
So you've got
I've got any of that out of it.
the bee, the sword, and the key, right? So, but they each correspond to different paths. And by the end of the book, you have someone with a bee on their chest, you have someone with a sword on their chest, and then you have the new keeper.
Cat with the key.
Cat with the key.
She opens up the harbour.
Because Dorian ends up with a sword on his chest after he goes down and falls into the sea.
That's weird because I keep thinking Zach was the one with the keys.
I keep getting that all confused. I was just like so confused by all of that type stuff, and I was just like, I can't even follow it. Like, I just can't even follow this.
Did he have a lock Am I going crazy? Did he have a lock?
He had a key, but he was beloved of the bees, so I equated him to the bee by the end of it.
But that's exactly the kind of thing I mean. Like, there was miscommunications there. Like, which one am I supposed to follow as being?
And I think the story actually changed. So, and it says that as well all the way through it. Oh, the story's changed. There's a change happening. It's not what we expected. Something's changed and the story's changed. Because at one stage I thought Zachary and Dorian were the sun and the moon.
See,
And
to
they were
me,
heading towards the inn. They're meeting at the inn. And like, they're the sun and the moon. They don't even know it. And that's why they weren't together a lot, because they kept missing each other like the sun and the moon do.
See, this is why I equate this book as kind of like reading Gatsby without having the equivalent of your English class in high school to explain all of the meaning behind it all. Because you read the story and you're like, this is shit, everyone's awful. And then you go to class and you're like, oh, that's why it's a really clever book and why we study it and all of that. That's what I need for this book.
But every
You need
is
the clip notes.
awful in the Gatsby. They're all awful.
I'm saying, but like,
That's his point. Like, they are all awful, but they're supposed to be awful.
yeah, and there's reasons, and it's all about how smart the writing is and all of that sort of stuff. And that's what this book is to me. Very smart writing, but I'm not clever enough to get it, and to enjoy it, I need to get it.
I want to read. I don't have time to read books to try and like be smart. I want to read books that I enjoy, and if I'm not like just enjoying the story, then like it takes the fun out of reading for me.
Yeah.
Like,
but I'm really glad some people enjoyed it, because I wanted her next book to be fantastic. And so even if it wasn't something that was for me, I'm really, really happy that it did work for some people. Like, it wasn't a shit book, it's just not a book for me, and that's okay.
Question. Oh, geez, moved. Everyone's still here, right? Yeah, everyone's
Yeah, everything just shifted for some reason. I don't know why.
No, because I just dropped out. My thing froze.
You know that really flowery, beautiful book, but again, it basically was like a poetry prose book that we read, Two Lovers Across Time. This is
How You Lose the Time War, yes.
Yeah. I know Elizabeth loved it.
Yeah,
I love that one. That was a me book.
Loved that one.
Mel loved that one. G, did you read it, and how did you feel about it? You didn't read it. Okay, because I was trying to see if there was a bit like, I was just trying to see, because I was like, this is good, but again, there's a lot of like meaning.
I feel like it's a good comparison, actually, Sarah.
I would agree.
Like, you probably would get more on second readings because there's so much threaded through it, and you know, the language was really beautiful in this. I mean, she does know how to thread beautiful language, and her descriptions.
I will still read her next book regardless, because
and her descriptions of the spaces were amazing. You know, except I've never been really big on honey, so all I could think was,
less now.
Don't ever read, Sarah. Don't read the bees then.
The idea of being in the sea of honey, and then when he washes himself off and he's like, you can't get it all off, I'm like, yeah, it would be awful.
Oh god, I just the smell, it was just
covered with honey now forever until you can shower for about 30 minutes. And those
you need a soap that can cut through it. There was no mention of soap anywhere.
Yeah, he was like,
and it was cold water. He specifically said how it was cold water.
Because he was sure.
And I was thinking about what honey is like when it gets cold.
Cold water, that's doing nothing for you.
It freezes it enough to chip off, I guess. But
sorry, it's like that chewing gum thing. Put it in the freezer and then chip it off. No.
Yeah, but you're definitely better off using hot water.
Oh, so funny. Oh.
Yeah, I'm in love with the kitchen. I loved what, you know, when he's like, sends the note down, he's like, kitchen, I love you.
Love you. They're like, we're rather fond of you too, Master. I thought that was beautifully done. I liked, Eleanor's ship and her map was awesome. I did love that. That was, and then it all just came together and she explained that beautifully.
Also, the idea of going into uni like a month before it starts and just read your way through the library. I mean, like, my people right there.
The stuff at the beginning about the narration, the narrative flow of gaming, and like games and how there's a story being told in there as well. And yeah, that was really interesting.
It did kind of feel a bit like a game in that, like, things were kind of going back, and you know what I mean, like when you mess it up and then you go back to your save point and then you try. I
did note. G, who else? Nay, you're a gamer too. Karina, I can't remember if you're a gamer or not. She can't hear.
I'm more of a gamer than she is.
Okay, good. Then I'm talking to.
The look on your face was like horrified.
Of course you are. What am I talking about? Of course you're a gamer. We're always talking about back pocket. Anyway, okay. So I noted in the acknowledgements that she thanks the creator of Dragon Age Inquisition. I hated Dragon Age.
Not a fan either.
So there you go.
That explains a lot.
Pretty based game. It's not about the fighting or chippy choppy shooty shooty.
If I wanted to have a conversation, I'd have a conversation.
I don't mind those kind of games, but just decide what you are. It couldn't anyway. Like Karina, you know what I'm talking about. Like I love watching like the dating games, like the daddy dating game.
I've played that.
I am so there for that. But this, I was like, why do you spend all the time making a character? I don't know. Anyway, I didn't love it. So I thought that was the thing. I was like, well, that's a sign.
Interesting division there. That reflects the opinions on the book quite well.
Blasty game. So
if you have dragon in the title, I better be able to hit the dragon.
yeah, I did. I killed 21 of those motherfuckers.
When?
All throughout the game.
Was it like 4 minutes of the 1,000-hour game?
No. Those dragons take a really long time to kill. They're really hard.
They're annoying too. They just appear.
Yeah, especially when you're low level. They're like, ha, yeet, motherfucker.
Anyway.
I liked, I also am a big fan when I was reading the beginning of this book. So I like a book that's set on a university campus in the East Coast kind of region. So I enjoyed and there's something about those older campuses. You know.
I enjoy that for English campuses as well too, like those.
Yeah. It feels like, you know, they're towns which have come up, like the university, and then the town grew around it. I know, it's just it's very romanticized. I know that, but I do love that. It's one of the reasons, like, I know we all read Fall on a Hill. Well, some of you did, and that was one of the reasons I think I loved it.
No, not a single person here read it. The only person who read it was Tim.
It hasn't held up as well, but it was his debut novel. But that's set on at Cornell, which has the same, like, it's purposely set there, and I loved that. And yeah, so I was like, this guy's wandering around in the snow, reading books, going to the bar. This sounds great.
Yeah, it's like, that'd be nice. I mean, when I was at uni, I was like, when it wasn't uni term, I was working because, like, money, and I'm like, man, it would have been nice to just sit around and read and drink.
It sounded wonderful, like in his little attic room with his space heater and his tapestries. I was like, this is lovely.
Mel, did you read Tamlin by Pamela Dean?
No, I never. We discussed it after you read
right.
it, and we decided that it wasn't for me.
Yeah,
for similar reasons why this book was not for me, I think.
Yeah. I'm seeing some good parallels there, actually, but so I'm not sure whether Sarah would enjoy it, but it does have that really, like, university campus feel.
Oh yeah. From what I heard a lot from, because it was read by some book club read it.
It was Lady Volts.
That might have been it, yeah. From what they said, that you could read it on a shallower level and then just enjoy the story at that level, according to a couple of the people who reviewed it. But you would be missing out on the depth of the links to, it was the poem that it was based on, right?
Yeah, The Ballad of Tamlin, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fairly given from the title.
Yes, it's just that I'd never even heard of it prior to this book, so it wasn't something I was even vaguely familiar with, and wanting to go and read a poem so I could then read a book just felt like, homework.
So yeah, lots of literary references in that one. It was quite like the Starless Sea in that respect.
That's a good way of looking at it for me. That's the problem I have with these books. I'm fine as long as I get the references, but if I don't get the references, it starts to feel like homework. And I'm just like, is someone going to help me out with this? Where's my teacher?
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same. And because I'm able to know that they are references, I think I can get just enough to know that I'm missing something, and then that's frustrating. It's like if I didn't even realize I was missing stuff and I was reading it on that really, really surface level, then it probably wouldn't bother me as much. But because I'm getting a bit of it, but going, and like I said before, part of that's my own fault. If I'd read the whole thing that's why I said I liked the second half better probably, is because I read it in 2 days and I was remembering all the bits. But there was also bits where I was like, oh, that's referring back to something from before that was like 2 months ago when I first started reading it that I've forgotten about. So I think it's definitely partly my own fault with that. But
I think I was fairly similar to you in that, Kirsten, in that I started it, read about the first half, and then I had to stop because I had some blood picks, etc., that in between that I had to read, and then I picked it back up again. But I had the reverse effect. I have memories of enjoying the first bit and going, yeah, I'm into this is good. Coming back and being just like, could it actually get somewhere?
Has anyone read Middle Game?
no.
Okay,
That's Shauna Maguire, isn't it?
It's a whole completely different thing, and it's a portal. It's basically if you could take Escape to Witch Mountain and turn it into a portal style fantasy, science fiction fantasy-esque kind of thing. And
Portal as in the video game, or just as in it's a portal to another world?
It's a portal. It's a portal to
fantasy.
another world. Like,
okay, just checking, because if it's Portal the video game, it's a whole other kind of thing.
No. It's like
it was up for the Hugo, wasn't it?
There's different
Yes, it was.
lines happening, but that's like, and there's different stories happening. But the way she was, it was a bit easier to follow. But it was there were a lot of references, but she put notes at the back. She had end notes for everything. Well, not for everything, but for most of the stuff. And a lot of stuff she kind of made up on her own that then she released a book about. That's the actual book that gets referenced in this thing, if you're interested. But everything else, she put end notes in the back of her book, which made things a lot easier, except for when you did the audiobook. The audiobook doesn't give you that. But
Yes, does not transfer well to that space.
That's always a risk.
I was thinking about that when we were talking about S. Actually, I was like, there's no way anybody did the audiobook for that. Does an audiobook even exist?
I don't think they would have made one. It would have been too difficult.
Remember
How it had all those different colours, and you could either read the one colour all at once, or you could read the whole book from beginning to end with all the colours. And then
because I've reread that book multiple times now, I don't even read The Ship of Theseus anymore because I hate it and it's stupid and I don't want to do all of the illusions.
That was the mistake I made as I was reading that, and I hated that.
Yeah. So when I do rereads, I just read the notes, and I've gone through and done it in order. I've done it with the colour set. It's just, I enjoy the note story.
Maybe that's what I'll do. I have still got it. I deliberately haven't got rid of it, even though I've been so freaking tempted. I'll just read those bits and see how I get on.
Have you read it, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that was before my time.
No, I just thought maybe you might have picked it up. I knew you hadn't read it with us, but I wondered whether you might have picked it up, because I thought if you enjoyed this, maybe you might like it.
I didn't. I've heard it referenced somewhere else recently too. Can't for the life of me remember where or why though. Never mind. G, did you read it? Was that?
I'm halfway through it. I've got it here.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Halfway, and then.
As in, you actively reading it, or you were halfway and you?
I was actively reading it about a month ago.
Oh wow!
I reckon it's worth
I
it
ran
just
into
for all
that. The Ship of Theseus is boring as hell. So
yeah,
I think I started reading the Christoph one instead.
Yeah. I reckon it's worth having that book just for all the little bits and pieces that are in it. Like,
there's a name for it.
Ephemera. Yeah.
Ephemera. It is ephemera. Yeah.
Yeah, ephemera.
And I do love all that kind of stuff.
I think I remember where I heard about it before, and that was because my partner was looking for something like The House of Leaves, and S came up, I think, as a comparative title. So
I haven't read The House of Leaves, so I can't comment.
No.
that's another like super metatextual, weird ephemera.
Oh, I'm not going anywhere near it then.
Like, you have to read it in print because the typography does weird things, and
Yeah, S is very much like that, and because with S there, it's like there's this book called The Ship of Theseus, but then there's all these
which is the physical book that you get.
Yeah, so you get The Ship of Theseus, but it's got all these what are they called?
Handwritten notes.
There's a word for it though.
Marginalia.
Marginalia.
Thank you, marginalia. From these two characters that are talking to each other, and they're in different colours, and they've made these annotations through the book in one colour in one time, and then they've gone back and reread the book and put new annotations in another colour. So you can either like read the book from beginning to end, or you can read one particular colour and then go back and read the next colour. So you're doing it kind of chronologically. Or like I tried to do that, and then I'm not disciplined enough for it, because I was like, no, I should read the notes in chronological order and then come back and read the next colour. But then I was like, no, I need to skip ahead. I want to find out what's going to happen. So I was reading all the colours at the same time because I couldn't help myself. So,
and then there's also other bits and pieces that are inside the book that are like being put in it, like pictures and things like that that come out.
And,
all
So
sorts
this
of
is
bits and
sounding
pieces.
like an excellent Christmas gift for my partner.
It would be a very good Christmas gift. Yeah.
Back to the book.
I found something about the bees.
Oh.
An explanation of the bees.
Oh.
So someone said that they are thinking that people and their stories are like flowers, which the bees metaphorically pollinate, creating honey, which makes up the Starless Sea.
Wow.
It's as if the bees create a hive. A hive lasts as long as it needs to. The bees do their work, and when it's done, they move on and create a new hive.
Wow.
What's it called? The ants are doing it at the moment.
Swarming?
Swarming. Is it called swarming? Is that what happens? Yeah, when different
when they need to get to
queens
a new
come
hive.
out, and there's multiple queens, and they go off and form new hives.
Swarming.
Yeah. I spied a couple of winged ants. I'm like, oh, you're swarming.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff that I'm like, give me notes in there so that I can have these little bits of information, and I will reread you and enjoy you so much more.
I wanted to discuss Allegra.
Okay.
Because does the ends justify the means? I don't know. Did she just change when she left? It got very, very dark. No one has any thoughts
I mean,
about
she
that?
changed before she left. That's why she left.
But she didn't. She was doing it to save the place, right? She was trying to save the harbour, trying to save the stories.
Yeah, I actually didn't really get what was going on with her.
That's what I was trying to understand, and what I could think that she'd painted Zachary, Dorian, and apparently Kat in like this.
Because she gave up her sight instead of her tongue when she became white, it gave her the ability to see the future or see the story properly.
Right.
And because she was a painter, she painted what she saw, and because she painted all of these images of her like world ending, she basically decided, okay, I need to leave to make sure that never happens, not realizing that that's exactly what's going to cause this to happen. You cray lady, you can't stop the story. The story is what happens. Like, this is the one thing of the story that actually made sense. Like, this lady was given the visions of the future and went crazy. And like,
yeah. And I've been watching Dark, so it really reminded me of a couple of the characters who go, oh, if I go back in time, I can fix this. But what they actually do is make the whole story happen. They don't make it worse. They just make what they thought they were stopping happen.
Yeah. It's what's the parable about death and meeting death in, there's a, do you guys know what I'm talking about?
The one from Harry Potter?
It's about meeting death in this particular town that name I can't think of. And like the story was basically like this guy's trying to run away from death, and he ends up, you know, getting on his horse and packing up and moving to this whole other town. And Death is like, yeah, but I've got an appointment with him in this town or something. I can't even remember how to explain it without messing it up. But it's this parable about basically he's trying to escape death, but he actually goes to the place where Death was like, yes, I had an appointment to meet him in that town. Because
Right.
Death knew that was like, and so if he hadn't run away, he tried to run away from Death, then he wouldn't have ended up in the place where Death was going to meet him. And
Right.
it's
Which
it's
is
a classic
fate, right?
parable.
That's
I
the
just
whole
can't
thing we're
remember what
talking
it
about. What's fated will happen.
Yeah, it's like trying to get away from your fate is actually what causes it. Yeah.
Yeah, like trying to get away from the story is what actually caused the story to happen. Like if she had just continued on the path that she was on, I don't know that it would have, or at least would have happened in the way that it happened. Like she like ran away and left the library, and basically that's what started the path of them trying to find Zachary and Dorian. Like her being outside was what put Dorian on his path, because if she had never left, then she would have never found Dorian to sort of be a mother figure.
And she recognised him straight away to bring him in. Yeah.
You made your own story.
What was I going to ask? So the Keating Foundation, which called themselves the Owls, who were they?
They were trying to bring together a space where time and fate could meet.
Right. Okay.
Oh no, sorry, no. Let me back up a bit. They were trying to create a space where fate could be conceived out of time, so that she had an immortal incarnation.
They weren't always just human people, right? They used to be like actual like human owl hybrid people.
Unclear.
That's what I got confused about, because I would like that again. That was a story that
It was like
we didn't get much of.
the young girl who had the feather in her heart, and then she saw the Owl King, and that the princess ran away from her kingdom
With the
and she
sword, and then she went home. She went there, and she gave the sword, and then he said, "Give me 3 days, and then you'll never want to leave." That one.
No, because she was told by like the town that her daughter was
Oh yeah.
and then she took her daughter to the Owl King, and then her daughter picked up a feather and put it in her pocket, and then the feather went into her heart or something, and then she had a feather and that. Yeah.
So who was that?
She has no future.
She killed the Owl King? Did he? See,
I didn't get the sense that she killed the Owl King. She went back to the Owl King, and then the Owl King said,
go back and
"Stay."
chop his head off, because that was her. Yeah, wasn't that her? She went back and chopped his head off. If no one remembers, this is not a good sign for the book, okay, guys? Like, if she's the girl that chopped the Owl King's head off, because that's the story that Dorian was telling when he was real drunk, right?
So that was two different stories. The swords, the three swords is one story.
Yep.
And the young girl with the bad luck name is another story. But they could also be the same story.
Same story.
Maybe.
And they change and adapt and move. Yeah, okay. Anyway,
Did you notice that the keeper was wearing lots of rings? A ring. Did you pick that up on the story of the three swords? That one of them was melted down and a ring was given to her lover every year.
Yep.
And there were many, many years.
Yeah, no, I didn't pick up on that. This is the problem I have. I'm not smart enough for this book.
I love
I'm so not smart.
I don't think it's a matter of
they
being
were the
smart,
same.
but maybe
They were the same as the
reading
moon, and they were
faster.
the same as fate. Like, I just guessed they were all the same, and the pirate, and like, although I had to be told, like finally she did actually say that the pirate. Like, I did like it when he said, "Oh, I'm the pirate, but I'm actually a rogue," and I was like, "Oh, cool! Actually admitting to something. This is good." So I wouldn't have, But I kept thinking they were actually the moon and the keeper, and I didn't realize it was fate, because it was just like, well, you are a keeper. You're not an innkeeper, but you're a keeper. So Right, so the key thing found.
For those who enjoyed the book, I've put a link in the chat.
I saw it. It was very pretty.
I linked in the chat to the story that I was badly telling, and that is a better version of what I was trying to say. And for those listeners who are watching this who cannot see that, the story I was talking about is called The Appointment in Samara.
Oh, that does sound familiar.
Yeah, I just did a bad job of explaining it.
That
I was
is-
like, I read this thing and I was remembering it, but I couldn't remember it clearly enough to retell it very well.
That is
I think
super
that's
pretty.
part of my problem, though, with these sorts of things is that I often have, like, I've got a lot of experience in terms of exposure to these things, but my memory's not that good that I can remember all of them.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of my experience all the time is I'll be just like vaguely, the title sounds familiar, but I could not have told you the story. So.
The story actually reminded me a little bit of one of the Ted Chiang stories that is in his new collection, Exhalation. What was the first story called, Mel?
Give me 2 seconds, I'll get it up.
Annihilation?
No,
That's Vandermeer.
Jeff Vandermeer, yeah.
I thought, no,
this is
Ted
Ted
Chiang wrote
Chiang.
the other one that I wanted to, he wrote the time one, right?
I've almost
About
got it. 2
sections of time.
seconds. I'm very
He
close.
wrote what the short story that the movie Arrival was based on.
Arrival. I knew it was what beginning with A.
The Merchant and the Alchemist's Gate.
That's it. It's a very similar story, but without death.
Yes, it definitely lacks this level of depth.
Without death for the protagonist, at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Did anyone watch? And I think it might be on Netflix. If not, or maybe it's Prime. Did anyone used to watch The Storyteller? Jim Henson's The Storyteller when they were a kid.
No.
Other than me, am I just showing my age?
I knew it. But
You're about
I
the
never
same
watched
age as
it.
me, so.
Yeah, G, you watched it?
And it's coming back, hey?
Yeah, and I think it's on one of the streaming services. I'm not sure which, but there was
I'm
always
going
one.
to suggest that it's probably Netflix because Netflix has also done the what's the other one with that was originally Jim Henson?
Labyrinth.
Crystal?
Oh,
Yes.
the Dark Crystal. And
Dark
I think they've got
Crystal, yes.
Labyrinth on as well. Anyway, there was always one on The Storyteller, which, again, I'm going to be like Kirsten, not tell it very well, but it was about a man who was given an hourglass that he could see death. So he could hold it up and see whether death was present, and he was losing his losing members of his family. And if the death was at the foot of the bed, you had a chance. But if death had moved up to sit next to the loved one at the head of the bed, then it was a done deal. And I don't quite
That's an
remember
old fairy tale.
Yeah, well, that was The Storyteller. It was taking old fairy tales from around the world and then doing them with puppets and actually I don't know
Really
the whole
scarily.
Yeah, but it was a great show, and I don't know whether it holds up, but it always really stuck with me. And then basically the person who had the looking glass or the hourglass managed to scare death away, and then death was so afraid of the man that death never came for the man, and the man was destined to walk the earth and never die, and was then actively looking for death.
There's an X-Files episode that I'm sure has stolen its idea from that story because
I
it's
think
very
it's a
similar.
really old fable,
It's
and
a really old one.
yeah, but that's always really got me, because there's also that one from Harry Potter. Sorry, but with the the three brothers, and the one who welcomes death, hides from him and then welcomes him at the end. And I always just think it's always really interesting, the stories about death. The fables about death are really cool. What was anyway, thank you for helping me understand some of the bits of the book that I didn't quite get.
It actually, and this is why I feel like if I did reread it, I would get a lot more out of it, especially after having conversations like this. But
I feel like it's, sorry. I was just going to say, I think it's the kind of book that perhaps we have a particular style of how we do our book club. I think this is the kind of book that would have actually benefited from that more slower pace of where you do like a portion reading and then you come and you talk about it and then you do a portion reading and talk about it.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
then
Would that not have made it worse for some people who thought it was not focused on a single story?
I think it might have made it where I felt more like I could digest things and unpacking. And I might have picked up on being frustrated and been able to sort it out enough that I might have finished the book.
Yeah, I feel the same. Like, I think if we discussed it a little bit at a time and you guys had gone, hey, but this means this, and I'd be like, oh, I'm really dumb, but now that makes sense. I
and it makes you appreciate it as you're going rather than getting frustrated as you're going.
Conversely, though, I think that you will have more problems remembering and making connections.
Well, which was part of the problem for me as well, because I did because I just don't get to read physical books as much as I used to, because I don't really have a lot of time, and I tend to read a chapter before I go to sleep, and I'm, especially when I'm really tired, I can't even sometimes finish a whole chapter, that it does become so drawn out that I've just like, what happened again? I can't even, especially because I'm reading it while I'm going to bed and so I'm sleepy. Which is why I tend to do better with audiobooks, because I'll listen to audiobooks while I'm doing household chores and stuff or driving to work. So I'm definitely awake and I'm not tired as much, and I don't get more time with it, so I get through them quicker. So I definitely think there's a lot of other factors besides the book itself that made it difficult for me. But yeah, but I didn't have that problem with The Night Circus. I read that not like as a physical book. I didn't read that as an audiobook, although maybe that was before the kids.
Less complex, less connections to make.
I probably read it before I had kids too.
Shorter.
Yeah,
this is shorter. This is 500 pages. So
yeah, and for some reason I thought this was, I don't know why, and as I said, I felt like when I got to 60%, I was like, really? I'm only just over halfway? And then I still stand by, we could have spent a lot less time stumbling around with Zachary and Dorian in the the caverns, because that was dry. You know, it was just really getting to me. And I know it was supposed to be nightmares, you know.
Time was broken. Time was broken.
Well, I was like,
I can tell that you're so excited by this book, G. Like, you're getting all up.
I love that you guys loved it. I mean, I'm so happy that people liked it.
Me too.
Yeah. That's good.
And I've been in that spot where I'm like the one person who loved the book and everyone else is like, nah. And I'm like, I don't care. I love it anyway. I don't care that you don't like it.
This is why I have trauma about that kind of thing. And every time someone's new to the group and they're picking books, I'm like, yeah, don't pick something you really, really love.
Well, I picked this one and I didn't love it. Like, I didn't hate it. Like, I didn't. It's not like one of those books that I'm going to sit here and trash.
No.
It's just, it wasn't just.
And we have had books like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. We've had books where I've been like, I'm going to rant about how much I hate this book.
What was that? What was that second one? What was the one? The second novel that like was oh crap, and I know that shit. So Elizabeth just pulls out titles and authors, and I don't know how she does it. And I'm like, what was that book with the thing and the stuff? You know,
that's maybe why. This is maybe why Elizabeth liked it more. She's just got a better memory, and she's able to connect all the dots. Where I'm like, who was that again? What was going on?
In my opinion, I have a terrible memory for books.
Are you kidding?
One of the reasons I started writing reviews is so I could remember what I'd thought about the books that I'd read.
Oh no, I can tell you what I think about books. I just can't tell you what they're called.
Who the main characters? I forget the characters' names.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Like, pretty much immediately after I finished the book.
Anyway, give me something more than second book. Come on.
Okay, so we really enjoyed the first. Oh, it was Ready Player One, and then we read the second book.
So it's not the second book by the author, not second book of the series.
Yeah. Armada, because I was going to say Artemis, but that was the second book by Weir, not
Armada.
Right,
Armada. Oh God, that was awful. That was awful.
That was truly awful.
Struggled through it. And Mel had at least threw it at the wall about 10 pages in.
And we went. So Nye and I absolutely enjoyed Ready Player One the first time we read it. After we did Armada, a little while later we went back to Ready Player One. Couldn't finish it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Naomi, I think you were trying to say something earlier.
Yeah, you were.
Oh no, I was just trying to ask Sarah. Was it the one with the two stories that we really hated? But no, it's not. It's fine.
What were the two stories that we hated? What's that one?
The one that I picked that had like the stories about the kids in the school, and then there was
Oh, yes.
kids in the town, and like the two stories did not make sense together, but they like either one of those
What are
stories
you
would have
talking
been
about?
fine. You did not read this book, so you can be
Clearly.
quiet.
I don't remember it either. Did I read it?
Maybe I blocked it.
Yeah, you did.
Was that one Smoke?
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
that one. I didn't mind that one. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like. I
You're
didn't love it, but I
gentler
didn't
on
hate it.
books than
I am.
You are gentler with books. You're like, I didn't hate it.
Part of a lesson.
It takes a lot to make me hate a book.
It wasn't that I hated it. It was that it was like two stories that made no sense being in the same book.
But you always talk about it like it was literally the worst thing ever. And
I think
just because I didn't finish it, not because it was bad.
I just think it's more that you were the person who picked it, and so you
Yes.
felt bad that it
What's it
wasn't as good as you hoped
called?
it would be. Because it wasn't awful. It just wasn't
It
great.
Later.
book that I picked that nobody liked, which is why
Maybe I didn't read this book. It's called Smoke. I can't find it.
Yeah,
Someone
it was the
I don't
one
think
where
a lot of
like
people read it.
people would actually smoke. Was it when they were lying, or when something happened that would
Yes,
make them
when
actually?
when they
have
were
smoke.
lying, they would start to smoke.
Yeah,
Okay, I didn't read this. I do not remember this one.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of people that actually read that one. I think that was a low attendance one.
Kirsten, Mel, Kim,
There are a lot of
I didn't read it. I was there just to record.
you were there.
Yeah.
Maybe Liv? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Can't
I just
It's like a
remember.
live book.
That was a long time ago.
One.
Yeah, that was ages.
What was
ago.
the Leilani Taylor one that we read?
That was my pick, I think, was it?
Yeah, and I enjoyed it right up into the end, and then I just wanted to hurl I was like, you're not getting me back for the second one, you can F off. I'm so
No,
angry with
Strange
you
the
right now.
Dreamer, that one was.
That was
Strange the
one.
Dreamer.
Oh, man.
Oh yeah.
I love
Ugh.
Strange the Dreamer and can't
I just-
stand your own boat.
What was that one, Karina? Sorry, what did you say?
I loved Strange the Dreamer. I could not stand Daughter of Smoke and Bone.
Really?
Yeah,
'Cause I
enjoyed
love Daughter of Smoke and
but
Bone.
never read any further than the first book. Always meant to, just never did. But
Same.
I
straight.
liked the first one. I didn't like the ones that came after it. 'Cause
So
it was-
I did well then. I chose
It's saving
wisely.
us all a lot of time. Thanks, Bobby.
It was. I read them all, and I did like the second and third one, but they were definitely not as good as the first one.
I think if I'd been a bit younger, I probably would have loved the whole thing. But I was sort of, I was it was right when they first came out. I had a friend suggest them to me, and I quite liked the first one. And then I read the other ones, and I was just like, I'm too old for this shit. I'm just a little too old.
It is YA. I thought that actually, I think that was what I liked about the first book.
With me,
It was quite good YA for the first one. Like it wasn't.
yeah, but it was well, the universe, I enjoyed the universe of it. I enjoyed, there was still darkness to it. Actually, Bobby, I can imagine it's totally up it's got a very fairy tale aspect to it.
No, I've read all of them.
Yeah.
The first one was the one that I quite liked and was happy to go and read again if I felt like I just wanted kind of something playing because I had the audiobooks. The other ones I was glad I got them from the library and didn't waste a credit on them just because they didn't.
Yeah.
Well,
That's the thing about this one. I got it through the library on an e-reader, and I'm, yay.
I actually think that ties into some of my frustration with this book because I got a special edition that I ordered from Waterstones in the UK that you could only get from them, and
But it's still pretty. I'm not getting rid of it. Look how pretty it is.
yeah, well, that's the discussion I had with Nye today because I pulled it out for the hangout and I was like, it's just such a
Mine doesn't have the things on the spine.
Oh, that's gorgeous. I mean, look, the world she created in my mind was spectacular. I'm not going
And
to
look,
take that away.
really
I'm
pretty
still keeping
end
this on my
papers
shelf.
too.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty
I
end
like
papers
the symbolism, and I like this, the idea of, because I actually have a look. I should have brought it. I've got a little bee brooch that I love. Oh, you're signed.
Oh wow.
What am I missing?
It was signed. G's copy was signed.
Ah, right. Yeah, I didn't get the signed ones because I didn't want to pay the extra money for it. I don't know why, but I just don't care.
I got this one through the Fireys fundraiser, so I paid an obscene amount for it, but
Oh,
it
goodness,
went
yeah.
straight to RFS.
Oh, that's good.
Nice.
Yeah. But what I particularly liked about this one is, I don't know why, but I hate the running man on the front.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either.
Yeah, so I really liked this one for not having that, and I was
You
like,
know
yeah, I'm
what?
willing to do that.
I did not even see that until you just said that. I'm like, what running man? And then I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah. And I actually don't like him in the end papers.
But I like it.
I feel like this
cool.
illustration is beautiful and this is out of place.
Yeah.
Which is maybe intentional because he's kind of out of place in the story, but
Maybe.
I don't know.
And he's on the front cover?
did not even notice that was on the front cover until you just said
Is
that.
he?
I missed out on having strong opinions about things yet.
Oh, David.
David, you
No.
know.
Right, we want to hear your thoughts. We hear they're interesting. Oh yeah, that is there. I don't like them on the
But I
front
actually
cover, I
read
like them on
this
the front
over
cover.
Christmas, New Year, and I skimmed through it again like last night. I noticed right at the end that the author credited the person who started NaNoWriMo, and that really explains a lot. It looks like they were starting to go through for quantity over quality, which is great. Their writing, even like that, is better than anything I could ever do. But I think that either they desperately need an editor or someone tried as best they could, and that's where we got. I love
I
this.
think
The
the nano.
and in a different order.
David, you and me, we're in agreement.
I actually
think
thought that I hadn't a problem with my attention span to try and get through it, so I'm kind of glad I wasn't the only one. It eventually makes it. I really loved the last like 50 to 100 pages of the book. But I also really loved the first page and the story about the pirate and how it started. But unfortunately, that scene ended on page 197. This is unfortunate. So yeah, better editing, and it probably would have done a lot better. Not that I can come close to that, but I really liked the whole story. But the amount of different narrative devices they were using was just overwhelming to the point I could barely keep up. Anyhow, that's what I thought.
A lot of us felt very similar, I think.
I think the NaNoWriMo thing might actually be referring to the Night Circus, because she actually originally wrote all of the little scenes and bits and pieces for that from the Night Circus during NaNoWriMo, and then she put that all together to make the Night Circus.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Buttoned it up maybe, because the Night Circus is very tight.
Yeah. Whereas I think this one I think it's suffering from the problem you said, David, but I think it's suffering because she's such a trusted writer. I feel like sometimes when that happens, they don't get edited as harshly, or that they can give pushback and they don't, that the editor lets them get their way, sort of thing.
Yep, She Who Should Not Be Named, that was definite problems with book 6.
I was thinking the same thing, exact same thing. I was like,
It started in book
the
5,
first
and I
person that
remember
came
seeing
to
it, I'm
my
like
mind.
going, you are making the money, they are not going to put and in 6 and 7, there's so much of that could have been edited out.
And 5.
And 5.
And 5.
Half of 5 could have been cut out.
Half of 5 could have gone, yeah.
Yep, I agree. They were like, oh, I don't care anymore.
Don't
Just
care.
write whatever you want. People will buy it.
No, there's an opportunity here. There could have been like 3 books. Like.
Have you read The Night Circus, David?
No, I haven't.
Please read it. It's fantastic.
We all think you would enjoy it.
If it's
Especially if you liked her writing, you just didn't like the story.
I liked the story.
And you didn't like the writing?
The writing I loved, but the way it dragged out and the way it cut around, I couldn't keep up with. That was driving me nuts.
I think you'd like the Night Circus. It's
Night Circus
more balanced.
Together, then that it would probably be fantastic.
It is much beloved.
It's only 2 stories rather than 4.
Yeah, and the vignettes within it, the vignettes are a lot more obvious in how they tie back, and they're not chopped up. They're very much like solid pieces.
I didn't have the feeling when I was reading that I had with this, where I was feeling like overwhelmed and confused. So
I enjoyed the breadcrumbs. Like, I was trying to figure out what the breadcrumbs were in this, whereas the breadcrumbs that you're being laid in or put down in the Night Circus, you're like, oh, you can pick them up, you can see them kind of like little lights in the distance. You kind of go, oh, when are we going to come back to that? You know, and some you don't realize you're going to come back to, that she's done good enough of the job. You go, oh, I remember that.
I did not guess who the keeper was at all in the whole thing.
yeah, I was confused by that too.
I really, really, really want the kitchen, right?
I think
That was me. I was like, yes, I can live in this place. This sounds awesome.
They made everything out of honey.
Yeah,
I don't care. It didn't taste like honey.
they were so nice.
And they were just like, he would like ask for something and they'd be like, I'll send you a bit extra just because we love you.
I love you, kitchen.
Yeah.
No, that was
If it wasn't for the kitchen, then he wouldn't have been resurrected. So, you know.
Yeah, I really liked the kitchen. Was my favorite part of that book.
I liked. Oh, can you guys hear me? I did enjoy the rooms with the fireplaces and the, you know, I even like the inn with the wind howling outside and the big fireplace. I'm like, I'm all
I like
for
that too.
I'm all for hibernation of Huge. So I'm like,
Yep.
give me
Yeah.
a cold, snowy or pouring down with rain day, and you know, candles and fireplaces and books and tea, and I'm happy. So I was there for that. Oh, and the cats.
I was going to say the cats. We haven't talked about
You
the
talked
cats.
about the cats. Do you think the ginger cat was the same guy who was in the ballroom scene? Because that's what I thought.
He did say the people just disappeared.
There were a lot less cats in the scene, in like the chronologically earlier scenes.
Because I was thinking when he went to the ball, and he was like the red-headed man talked to him, and then I didn't notice that. I hadn't noticed it was a ginger cat until later, and so I'm like, I wonder if that's actually who it was. So yeah, maybe
Well,
it was.
the cat actually does talk at one point.
Oh no, that's his Persian talks to him. Not the ginger cat.
My mistake.
I don't know if that was really.
I mean,
You guys don't know what's
one
going
there is
on either.
blurry, so.
Oh man. But was there any significance to the whole, like, you're not supposed to feed the cats and then he fed the cat? Was that like?
No, just because
You're not meant to feed cats in libraries because they're there to catch mice.
Okay. I
Working
don't
cats.
have any cats or mice in my library, but hopefully.
Well, when
Not
you
that
go
I
to a
know
library
of.
that big, you might need some cats for the mice, especially if you want to
Maybe.
preserve the books.
Mm-hmm.
Because they eat books.
Mm-hmm. And nest in them and do all kinds
Apparently
of
cats do too.
Yeah. So my children as well. Did I show you that photo of Xander when he was 2 years old? He wouldn't even been 2 yet. He would have been like 1, or he was only crawling. And he picked, like, I had this old copy of like the works of Shakespeare that I'd gotten from my great uncle, like was really, really old. And he started picking, like the leather was all peeling at the top and bottom, and he'd been picking pieces of leather off it and eating them.
Oh no.
I'm like,
It's a kid thing to do.
yeah. I've got a photo of it somewhere of him eating my book. And I was like, God damn it. I'm going to have to show him this when he's older. Eating my book.
Slideshow presentation 21st with all of his most embarrassing pictures.
Yep.
Was there anything else we wanted to discuss, or shall we call it a night?
Yes.
I think I'm done.
Me too. Well, apparently I need batteries, so that sounds like a plan.
All right, guys. Well, if anybody joined us, thank you for joining us. You're impressive that you got through an hour and a half of this, or whatever it was, length. Anyway, thank you very much. Next hangout, we are doing, next full book hangout, we are doing Aurora Burning, which is the second book in the series. So we'll see you then.
Looking forward to that. Bye.